Call to order the Thursday, October 16th meeting of the Underhill Planning Commission. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda? No. Okay. I noticed some people from the public are on tonight. I see Michael's on. Does anyone have any public comment or folks just attending the meeting? Okay.
Could whoever DR is just identify yourself for the minutes? Hello?
Maybe they walked away or something.
Possible, yes.
Okay. Okay. So assuming there's no public comment, that takes me to the update on the Riverside Flats wastewater project. Do you already know all this, Larry, about the meeting that Brad set up?
No.
Okay. Well, actually, Brad didn't set it up. So the planner from Jericho,
Chris.
Thank you, Chris, and the woman from CCRPC who they have contracted with, whose name I'm also blanking on, thank you, Kate, reached out to Brad and said, hey, let's have a meeting about the Riverside Flats wastewater project. And Brad said, hey, we're having a meeting about the Riverside Flats wastewater project. Would you come? So I went. This meeting was like a week ago. I don't remember the exact day. So I thought I should fill everyone in on what happened on that meeting. So basically, we kind of filled them in with where we are, including the survey and stuff. The one main logistics thing, Larry, is I told Kate we would share our survey with them because she was hoping they're sending out a new survey of some sort.
Yes.
And she was hoping our wording could potentially tie out.
Aligned, yeah.
Wait, Jericho's sending out a new?
Yes.
Okay, and she works for CC or?
Yeah, they have some, they contracted with her,
supporting role
basically.
in that project.
Yeah, okay, why can't we just use the same? Well, go ahead, finish up.
Well, here's why I think we can't use the same survey. This is more, this is less data and more commentary. I think they were surprised at a couple of our questions, particularly our question about the middle school field. I'm not sure they were huge fans of that question. So we'll have to see what comes back. Kate might say, no, that's incorrect, just in their defense. But they were definitely surprised by the question. She said they had not asked, and she said there is really no alternative site. So that's it. That's what they're going forward with. And I said, by the way, this wasn't a contentious meeting at all. I said, look, on the planning commission, I'm pretty sure it was basically unanimous that everyone said we should flag 2 items. One, the middle school field. I said, we tried very hard to word it fairly and neutrally. Like I said, I didn't know it was the only site actually. I said, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me. But one site, the question reads something like one site under consideration is the middle school field. Like, how would you feel about that? And I said, we also specifically asked, like, if like this were to increase your taxes, would that change how you feel about it? Like loosely paraphrasing again, right? So I thought it was a good meeting. I do think, I don't know that we're 100% on the same page as Jericho. Chris did say like, hey, just so you know, we do care a lot about maintaining our rural character too, but we're trying to focus development in certain areas. And I said, that's really nice to hear. And I told them like, I think what folks here have generally said. And I said, we're just trying not to get ahead of the population of Underhill, and we'd like to see what folks think about it. And I think we're not quite as, well, not I think, I mean, I know we're not quite as far along as you, but Larry's been doing this and that, and we're pretty much ready to send the survey out. And that's when Kate said, would you mind sharing the survey with us before you did it, so we could potentially tie out wording on a few things? I said, of course we don't mind. I'm happy to do that. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of the meeting. It was like an hour. I think Brad was a little more confrontational is not the word I'm looking for, but there was direct. Yeah, a little more direct with them about maybe like, I'm worried about certain things around this project and Park Street's in Underhill, and there's all kinds of traffic problems here. And apparently there was some prior iteration of this before, who's the gentleman, I'm forgetting his name, who owned the land before Tetra got?
Villanelle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
At some point earlier with Villanelle or some earlier iteration with Tetra when they were looking at that wellness center or health center
Yeah,
there.
that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, well,
Right, I
apparently,
was around, I went to meetings.
well, apparently a bunch of traffic concerns came up or something at that point. I mean, obviously this was 14 years before I lived here, right? So apparently a bunch of traffic concerns came up or something and Brad was bringing those back and saying we need to address some of this and traffic studies and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's the meeting. The only action item out of the meeting, like real action item, is this survey thing, which I was hoping you might, I figured you knew her, Larry, if you don't mind helping to coordinate that.
Yeah, just one detail on
please.
this survey, which is that Kate and I spoke a few weeks ago, and we discussed the draft survey that we've been kicking around here. And she mentioned that their new survey, would be their second survey that they're proposing or talking about.
They've already done a survey.
No, it hasn't gone out yet.
Oh.
That she wanted to know if we would coordinate around a survey. And I said, well, if it makes sense, I think we're open to that. And she said, oh, by the way, we're going to be asking some very specific questions of property owners in the Flats district on our side of the line about if this community wastewater were available, would you use it? Like, would you build an addition on your house? Would you add an additional unit to your property? Would this make building an ADU more feasible, and cost effective for you? And I said, I thought it was a great question. I mean,
we already have it on ours, I'm pretty sure.
we have
a version.
a more version of that, yeah. And so we did agree that number one, it would make sense to proceed in alignment with them rather than separately if that could be worked out. Number two, we agreed that it would be really important to have a landing page, like an informational page with a link on the survey, which, in your draft, you would actually put a little placeholder for that. And she said that they would be working on that. It wasn't ready yet. So we agreed that it didn't make sense to send the survey out before the information was up and available for people to look at. And we also agreed that it was potentially delicate to be asking the whole town on our side of the line, what do you think about this prospective system, without having more context about it? Like, that it could become a big red flag for a lot of people and a political football that gets kicked around before the information is fully developed about what it's going to cost. So that's where we left it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had the question in about the,
What would you build?
would you build an ADU? Would
Yeah,
you build an addition? That was in their survey.
It's in the draft. They haven't sent it out yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she, one of the points was, should we be using the same survey? Because it is really about the same system. And I said, well, I will send you a copy of our survey, of our draft as it stands right now, and you can look at it. I can't remember if I did or not.
I mean, it is what it isn't, because it's only like 10% of the whole thing that we're buying into. So it's really not, because when you talk about it from a financial and usable perspective, it's vastly different. Like, yes, it's in the same general area because it's all tied together, but no, they're two vastly different systems. And it's predominantly in Jericho, not Underhill. So Jericho is always going to have a priority over it. I don't see the benefit in truly fully piggybacking on their questionnaire.
But most of the system will be in Underhill if it's at the school.
No, I think it's going to be south towards the administration building. Which is up
Well, it doesn't matter what town it's in. Larry could correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is the towns, that land belongs to the school district.
Yes.
And what Brad said that's interesting, again, Larry, as I always say, can correct me if I'm wrong. Brad said something about how he thinks, I can't remember what the reasoning was. He thinks that every town in the school district potentially would have to vote on whether or not to approve this system in the field. He had a reason, I don't remember.
So like Richmond,
Richmond,
anybody who's
Bolton,
kid gets
Huntington,
busted.
Anyone who,
Yeah.
everyone. I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, I don't think
Do you agree with that?
I don't think all the residents of all the towns have to vote on it. I feel like when it comes to land transactions and land development issues that the school board is empowered to make the decision on behalf of the district, you know, especially if it's going to be something that's mostly under the surface and it doesn't really affect the, you know, the ability of kids to play on the grounds and, you know, the day-to-day life on the actual property where this is happening. So I do think that, and that negotiation hasn't happened yet.
Right.
Either. So, you know, it would be up to the district to decide, you know, the board for that district to decide if it's something that they would entertain, and if so, you know, under what terms.
Well, apparently they're drilling, sorry, bits and pieces are coming back to me about this as things come up. Apparently they're drilling test holes or something over there with the school district's approval.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they've had some conversation with the school district already, right? It was with the Jericho planner. Yeah.
Yeah, so it won't be a surprise to the district at all.
Yeah.
You know, I think the district is cued into what's just being planned and discussed. But, you know, ultimately, you know, the engineering study will, among other things, will say, you know, this is the best site or this is the only site or whatever. I don't think it's been, that work is completed yet. And also, you know, scope out like what would be the you know, the piping, the force main, the, you know, the pumping stations, the, you know, the other infrastructure and where it would go. And, you know, so all that stuff has not been worked out yet. But I think it's very, I think it's exciting that we're having these conversations up front. We're practicing full disclosure with each other, which I think will help us assuage some of Brad's concerns. You know, I think Brad has had some trust issues with how
Jericho?
With Jericho.
Definitely.
I'm sure those came out in your meeting, but, you know, having full transparency and full disclosure about what's being discussed and, you know, agreement to information share freely and, you know, make sure that our plans proceed as much as possible with continued full disclosure and information sharing, I think is the right way to handle that. And I think both towns are committed to that at this point. So, you know, kind of to be determined is you know, the 3-word summary of where things stand. So, you know, with Kate, back to the survey and our survey in particular, I think Kate's advice was, let's at least slow it down to the point where we get that page of information up with a link. And that has to be distributed with the survey because we have our information sheet. And I think that is great as far as it goes. But, you know, people should be people who want to geek out and read the 300+ page engineering report, preliminary engineering report, you know, can have a link to that, and they'll be able to do that. People who want to click to, you know, read the Jericho Select Board minutes where they discussed and decided to go ahead with the grant application can do that. People who want to read the grant application to the state can do that. I mean, all that kind of stuff should be linked so that anybody who wants to know more can say, oh, I can, you know, if I have the time and interest, I can find this other information. So that's that.
Did they not want to be transparent about where each
I
thing would be?
don't want to, I'm not just saying this because we're on a recorded meeting. Like, I cannot, all I know is I agree with Larry. Brad has expressed that he feels like Jericho wasn't transparent with him in the early phases of this. I don't want to put words in Brad's mouth beyond that, and I don't know what the facts are. So I do know Brad's irritated with him.
Yeah,
I don't think that's any giant secret.
No, and Jericho needs Underhill's cooperation to proceed with the big Tetro project because of the Park Street access issue.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's going to be some discussion and probably an expensive bill or estimate associated with improving the intersection of River Road and Route 15. Because
It should be addressed.
that has to be upgraded.
Yeah.
As it is.
Yeah, it's bad level of service during rush hour already, and, you know, this would potentially make it worse. So, you know, the developer is going to have to contend with that, and, you know, that is typically a developer cost. Like, the town will require the developer to pay the cost of installing a roundabout or traffic signal.
They should eliminate it.
Yeah, I mean,
There's a way to eliminate it that I can see. What's that?
The whole intersection?
No, have the intersection right, go on that little side road right by the grocery store. Yeah, you go straight there. There's a light there.
Also, if you wanted to take a right, you would turn.
No, if you go left or right and eliminate the intersection altogether. Like, my kid almost got killed there in a car accident.
It's a
Like,
terrible
that's the worst intersection.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how the job.
I
ever
thought they
got
would
a
just put
permit.
a traffic light
It's horrible,
in
man.
there. But you're right, it doesn't fix the gas station entrances.
No,
and
it's
exits.
just a goat rodeo.
Yeah.
I don't even go that way.
Yeah, and if you remember back to the approvals associated with the Taft Corners project in Williston, I mean, Jeff Davis was trying to get the town to eat, and the state to eat the cost of improving Route 2 and the signalized intersections going into the various parts of that project. And the state and the town were like together, like united, saying, nope, that's on you. You gotta find a way to pay for this. We'll give you the permissions to build the project, we'll get you Act 250 approval, but you gotta sign on the dotted line that you will pay for those traffic improvements. And they weren't cheap.
Yeah.
You know, so,
I guess not.
yeah, so I think that's all in the future, but, you know, that's something the developer's gonna have to tackle. You know, some of it will be, because Route 15 is a state aid highway, there'll be some V-Trans issues with approvals and design and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I think the developer will have to pay the cost of that and make it, you know, safer than it is now.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because it's a problem already. Everybody knows that.
But yeah, for the survey, I think I agree with what Jeff was saying, that it's good, we should coordinate with them, maybe we share that landing page information and collaborate on that, but that there's good reasons to have, like, we can share our results and they'll share their results with us, but that it doesn't, I think I agree that there's good reason to have separate surveys, but that we can share the information.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a consensus on that, so.
And ours should be somewhat aligned to theirs.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that makes sense.
some of those
Not have
things,
some often,
right,
you know, out of the world question that they would have.
but they had issue with the tax question as well, or it was really just the location?
We didn't really talk much about the tax one. It was about the middle school field.
More that was, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, I think that takes us to discuss and adopt recommendations from legal review of Underhill land use regulations draft amendments. Next step for the select board consideration. Did you want to quickly run through those, Larry? And then I think we just take another vote to send this off to the select board, right?
Yeah,
So just for my, just to clarify, the little black boxes are basically the notes from the attorney, everything else, okay. That's what I thought. I
yeah,
wanted.
so for the, and the ADU draft, I did because it was just easier to manage what they had, their feedback. For the ADU draft, I took the liberty of actually just revising the original document and highlighting in yellow the changes. Let me share those since other people are on board here.
We do an ADU first?
Why not?
Oh, we're
On the
not.
screen.
Oh,
Okay. Wait till that comes up. There we go. Okay, so I took the liberty of highlighting in yellow the changes that he recommended because they were just very minor wording changes. So he said instead of within or nearby the principal single unit dwelling, he said just use the word from statute, which is appurtenant, a fancy word. So I substituted that.
he said to use that word.
Yeah, I think we purposely took it out because
Yeah,
everyone's
it's good.
confused by what I meant. But we gotta defer to the lawyer. on this.
That means it's subordinate, right? It's smaller, or
No,
it's,
this is-
it's obviously not your.
That's not what
primary
he's saying,
unit.
though. He's saying attached and appurtenant have similar meanings. Appurtenant just doesn't necessarily mean physically attached, so we should use the statutory language.
Yes. Yeah, and appurtenance is basically just a fancy word for it's nearby and associated with on the same property.
It doesn't imply,
irrelevant.
it doesn't imply subordinate.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
it's- yeah.
Just had a few discussions about this.
Yes.
Yeah, but we
With
went
somebody.
round and round on this one.
You might just have to put another link on the town site for a thesaurus, so
Yeah.
dictionaries that people
That in
can,
there.
yeah.
For normal people, not
Yes.
law people.
Yeah, that like hyper flip to like that word, right?
Yeah.
Just click on it and pew. This
I
is
like
what-
that.
Yeah.
How about if we do a set of explanatory videos with Roy on YouTube?
Yeah.
So it goes to link, like a
With Elmo,
20-minute video of Roy
Let me
debating
keep this
a-
really.
with like Elmo, it's like, Elmo, what is the word for to me? Well, right.
I could see it.
Good for you. That's good.
I can put my hand up in a puppet, and do some voiceover.
All right, so Jeff and Roy are gonna do a puppetry video.
To explain it.
And then the only other thing he suggested was, he suggested use the word lot instead of the word property. That's all.
Okay.
Just so it's clear that we're talking about a lot.
Yep.
Basically, specifically a lot. That's it. Everything else he was good with.
Oh, good.
That one was
Cool.
easy.
Oh, that's good.
So there's that one. Shall I go on to the next one?
Yeah.
Anyone? Questions? Pretty
No, I
straightforward.
don't have anything
Okay.
else.
Yeah.
Put it to bed.
Sawmill standards. So.
This one had more boxes actually.
Yeah. They're pretty,
None of it looked like.
nothing too
Saying to me,
substantive.
yeah, we should offsite. Yeah.
There's really one thing I think for us to discuss. Well, maybe two.
For some reason, I'm not, I have the hard copy right here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, the comments are.
Thank you. All right, so his comments were, he wanted us to add logs and other byproducts of the timber harvest. So that's, a little broader than what we had, just logs.
Seems fine,
It
right?
seems fine, right?
The next one's kind of like we need to say what we
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
14 days.
I think we meant 2 successive weeks when we were saying it, didn't we? Like if you're doing it for longer than 2 weeks. I don't think we meant like a week, take a month off, do a week. I'm
Right.
trying to remember back to the
I
discussion.
think it's,
It feels like we meant 2 successive weeks.
Okay,
What do you think?
that makes
Is that your
sense.
takeaway?
That makes sense.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, successive there. Okay, and then on the backside, he was concerned about language that, so under new section 4.18, the intention,
Yeah,
legislative purpose of this, protect residents of adjoining lots to the maximum extent practical. I think his thought was, we can't protect people 100%, right? So we
right.
shouldn't imply that we can protect people 100% from
Right.
impacts, because we can't. But that, to the maximum extent practical, we're trying to reduce impact, minimize the nuisance impact of this type of operation. So he just recommended inserting to the maximum extent practicable or something to that.
Does anyone have objections to that? That seems like a legal cleanup comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe just practical instead of practical. Keep it a little simpler. And then skipping on down to section 418C, again, crossing out parcel and putting lot.
Yep.
He added the word lawful in front of the second sentence in C to really highlight the fact that pre-existing, lawful pre-existing operations in existence as of the effective dates of this adoption shall be subject to non-conforming use provisions. So we're not saying that you have to stop business. We're saying
Right.
you just have to go through a non-conforming use review by the DRB to continue in that space, that work in that space.
Yeah.
Seems fair.
So anybody who has a wood processing business now that's been there forever,
Mhm.
if this gets passed, they have to go through the process of getting a permit.
Right, because because the moment that this is adopted, it becomes a non-conforming use. So that, to become legit, they have to go through the DRB for a non-conforming use permit, which would subject them to the standards in this whole section.
For just wood processing or sawmills?
This would be for,
It says
Portable.
under sawmills or wood, so it's
Yeah,
both.
anyway, either.
portable chippers and portable sawmills. Yeah, oh, right, sawmills and wood processing, or wood processing, so it's both. Yeah. And I think that people are concerned about this whole thing going into effect, should be satisfied by that, because otherwise they're off the hook. The operators are off the hook entirely from any kind of review. And I think the neighbors of Williamson, for example, would be very concerned if that was the outcome of of this whole exercise.
Right.
Because going through non-conforming use permit process will give them a voice in
So
that process.
I feel like I didn't read the whole thing, but
Yeah.
So I understand that.
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel like for some of these guys that have been doing it for 50 years to like have to spend a bunch of time doing this like paper pushing process, like should there maybe be a thing like lawful pre-existing within the past 10 years or something like that to kind of alleviate those guys that have been doing it for 50 that have to go through the process, or does that make things too, I don't know, preferred and
Yeah, it's hard to then peg to what time.
Then you're creating two classes of people though, too. I think that's a problem.
yeah.
I feel like one of the things that came out of the hearing, which I thought was helpful for the people who had a gripe about it, was hearing several people show up who've been doing wood processing on their own property for a long time.
Right.
Because, that some of the people who showed up who had objections to it said, well, we didn't ask for this. When we moved into this property, this wasn't a thing. And actually, it is a thing around town. And if you're cutting wood on your own property and processing it on your own property, it's exempt automatically.
Right.
And so, I think that there are some protections for traditional uses there, existing operations, but there also are procedural requirements that if someone is processing wood from offsite, that they have to go through, because that is the line that we drew. And we're not going to be on the wrong side of state statute that protects traditional forestry uses with this regulation. And I'm glad that David Rue agrees that this is a realm where we can, regulate and those operations, and that this is a reasonable set of standards.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thought I'd ask.
And then the last edits are about enforcement. So,
Well, just to make sure everyone agrees, sorry, Larry,
go ahead.
the 30 minutes, it looks like we accidentally wrote exceeding the nuisance ordinance for more than 30 minutes, 2 hours. And they're crossing out 30 minutes, meaning that we intended
He just wants to
2
make sure
hours.
that we actually
collect the right, but we meant 2 hours. I'm just
Yeah,
checking.
2 hours
We
was
had said
30
2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and so down to enforcement, he just wanted to make sure that there was some alignment between our nuisance ordinance and how that gets enforced and this language here. And so, it's wood processing operations that have been approved, not permitted, under this section remain subject to enforcement of the performance standards and the nuisance ordinance. And there was some discussion offline involving Brad and Dave Rue, the attorney, about how our nuisance ordinance is actually not where it needs to be. And so, with Brad, I left it that, well, that's not really my domain as a planner to fix if there are problems in the nuisance ordinance, that you need to work with the select board on that to fix them, and an attorney if necessary. But apparently the noise standards in our nuisance ordinance are a little vague and difficult to enforce. And so that's, that needs to be done. And it can be done completely separate from this. But there's no question that he raised a question like, is this the zoning administrator sort of in charge of fielding complaints through the nuisance ordinance and through any violations of this? And clearly he or she is in charge of that. I mean, I think the language of our nuisance ordinances and our zoning bylaw is very explicit that the zoning administrator has absolute authority to hear complaints and to investigate complaints, and then to issue notices of violation, and then to follow up, with any property owner who doesn't fix what is the cause of the violation, and levy, fines, basically write tickets to levy fines if the property owner doesn't clean up their act in a reasonable amount of time. So this is actually very handy. We didn't have this capacity in 2 towns I worked in previously, and I feel like it's good for the ZA to have a big stick to wheel, because otherwise they're just like filling out paperwork with complaints, but then you have to go to civil court to get a judge to agree that the issue is real, and then you have to go in a separate action to enforce a judge's order to cease and desist whatever the source of the nuisance is, and then you might have to get a third action to actually collect the money. So this is what we have is way better than that. It's streamlined, and I I think it's something the zoning administrator would use very rarely. But it's important for them to have that in their back pocket if they need it, to be able to get people to comply with the land use. Right.
So it sounds like this is fine, and maybe the select board needs to clean the nuisance ordinance up a little bit. Okay. All right.
Okay, so we're good with this?
Everyone, any?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Next up, event venues. Tim had a comment about this, even though he couldn't be here, he took the time to read through what was posted. And the town attorney called out the piece about distance of a new event venue from the property boundaries in terms of the setbacks. We initially suggested that we would require them to observe minimum zoning district setbacks for accessory structures, which are much less than for primary structures or dwellings. And the attorney's suggestion was to make that for primary setbacks for primary dwellings. So if the setback is 50 feet for a primary dwelling, it would be 50 feet minimum for the event venue. But then we also have this corollary that it has to be at least 250 feet from the nearest off-site residence. And so that's also like another protection or another minimum distance limit that Tim said could be effective, but he feels like, we just asked why we have setbacks at all that are different for event venues from a property line. And I said I would just pass that along.
So Tim's saying he thinks event venues should, he's agreeing with the lawyer?
Have the further setback.
Let me just grab what he said. He said, the only comment is on the events venue, it might be overly restrictive to keep within the primary structure setbacks. I think the 250 feet minimum from a neighboring occupied structure is adequate and covers the intent as the attorney alludes.
Oh, so he's disagreeing with the lawyer.
So he's saying so if there's a house that's already 300 feet from the property line, you have to maintain a 50-foot building setback, so now it's 350 feet, where the 250 feet is already substantial enough, because if that house is 50 feet from the property line, then that thing pushes it to the other side of the property. I think that's how he's interpreting it. So just get rid of the building setback language altogether, and just keep the 250 to nearest residence.
Yes.
That's how I'm interpreting it.
Yeah.
So at least his email.
Yes. So I guess I would interpret that as being, just get rid of the language that's in yellow there.
Okay.
Shall not encroach upon, shall not encroach upon required setback from surface waters and wetlands would be what's left.
How do people feel about that?
I guess it's fine if the primary purpose is to keep it away from a neighbor's house, right? I think that does the job.
Yeah.
Because it can never be
under
close
G.
to it.
Right.
But it could, does that mean it could be on the property line?
It could be 1 foot off. Well, is that right? Because we're not setting, it would still be a thing though, right?
Yeah.
It would still be by default, it would still be in an accessory structure.
I mean, you'd have to be a really bad business planner to do that, because this moment one of your patrons steps onto that property line, now your liability is just through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It seems like even without this language, by default, this thing, if I was a DRB and I was interpreting, well, what the hell's an event venue then?
Yes.
Well, it's an accessory, it's in an accessory structure, right? It's not a primary dwelling, so what else is it? Well, it's an accessory.
Well, so I think there's probably two flavors of these things that could be anticipated. One is rebuild inside an existing barn or other large building, and the other would be purpose-built from new.
Right.
And I think the one that, is it up off of Pleasant Valley Road?
Yeah.
That's new.
That's a second category.
Yeah.
But my guess would be that to the extent that we're going to see more of these in Underhill, it might be more rebuilds of existing barns and other structures, just because, often barns are sort of cavernous structures, and, if they're well built to begin with and in decent structural shape, and you're inclined to try to do this as a business on your property, then you're probably gonna choose to renovate a barn rather than build brand new.
If you build a new, then you have to go through then it becomes an ADU, and then you are adhering to.
So it becomes an accessory
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
What's weird about deleting it for me is just, it's weird that like everything else has setbacks.
Mhm.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand we have the 250 feet. But there's something still that strikes me a little weird about, we have setbacks for everything else, but we don't have a setback for event venues. That seems a little odd. It seems like they should be accessory or primary, even if they're mostly overridden by the 250 feet.
Or mainly it's just something to protect that really ignorant business person that would put it on the property line and then have a neighbor issue where hey, your people are stepping on my tulips or whatever.
Well, they are mentioned in G though, right? Or does that cover us kind of as to what Brian's getting at, that it's
It
considered.
just doesn't give an actual
It's not,
setback.
it's
It
not.
gives
Just a
yeah,
notwithstanding any other setback
yeah.
or other requirement, and it's not clear that it would fall under, for example, the accessory structures.
I agree with you, and I think, practically speaking, the 250 feet covers almost everything. I just find it odd on some level that we have these setbacks for freaking everything else, and then we don't have one. For that.
Think of
That's a little weird.
let's just think of a hypothetical situation. So I don't know, you come here from Jericho right down river, and there's that red barn right off the road, right?
Yeah.
So theoretically, somebody says, hey, I'm gonna turn that into an event venue, and it meets the setback of the neighboring houses, but it's 20 feet, if that, from the road.
Yeah.
How do you stop that without a setback? Then because that seems really dangerous.
How do we even address a pre-existing building in the event venue regulations?
Yeah.
That seems to be something we should have addressed from the start, right? I mean, think about it. I mean, I could think of a few barns in town where somebody's, that'd be a great wedding barn. I'm gonna turn my barn into a wedding barn. It's 20 feet from the road. It doesn't need any setback.
We are addressing it right now, aren't we? In E, because we're saying an event venue has to meet the setbacks for an accessory structure. So if you want to use your old barn and it's 20 feet from the road, well, you don't meet E, so you can't do
You
it.
can't do it. But I mean, I'm thinking,
Well, what the lawyer is saying is obviously, well, that's still probably not enough. You probably want to do the primary structure setback,
right?
which would bring up what you're saying about, not just for the neighbor, but the setback from the road.
I mean, what do you guys think about having a bylaw about existing barns that don't meet setbacks? I mean,
But why is it different than, why wouldn't it just have to, just to play it out, I'm not disagreeing with you, what
You
would
can
make it
turn-
different about the old one versus, why wouldn't we just categorize it as it has to meet all the setbacks of this category, whether that's primary or accessory? Who cares if it was an old barn or not?
but you can put an ADU in a non-conforming structure if it's too close to the property line. You can still do it, right? You can put an ADU in.
Right, so we have in the land use regs, we have a section, non-conforming uses and structures, right? And so the rules are a little different for that because we're basically allowing property owners, we're giving property owners some flexibility to redevelop existing buildings
Into ADUs.
into ADUs, yeah.
Yeah.
So non-conforming structures, so it's, the rule basically is a couple different parts. One is that any structure that's legally in existence that does not meet the requirements of these regulations, including setbacks, shall be considered a non-conforming structure. Non-conforming structure may continue to be occupied or used indefinitely in accordance with the act, subject to the following: may undergo normal maintenance and repair without a zoning permit, providing that that doesn't increase the degree of non-conformance, like barge into the setback, basically. The damaged non-conforming structure may be repaired or reconstructed in accordance with section 3.1, again, providing it does not increase the degree of non-conformance. And then a non-conforming structure may be structurally enlarged, expanded, modified, or moved with the issuance of a zoning permit, provided that those things do not increase the degree of non-conformance and meets all of the applicable requirements. And then there's a kind of an escape hatch. In the event that there's no reasonable alternative, the development rate review board may, upon application, and review, grant a waiver for the non-conforming structure to be enlarged, expanded, modified, and relocated, that reduces the setbacks by up to 50% through a conditional use review.
So basically, event venues would be included in this.
If it's something that would be built in this
Pre-existing one.
pre-existing
Okay.
structure.
Yeah.
So they would have to go through the DRB process to get the waiver, if they were closer than, the minimum setback.
So then that covers what you're talking.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what if people think about this lawyer's comment? Do we want to go accessory or primary? Or delete it? I mean, it's up to the.
I think we should go with accessory. I don't know, and it doesn't seem,
They didn't say we couldn't go with accessory, right?
No.
They just said this might lead to more.
The argument's not even legal, really. It's more just like, they're saying
Yeah.
like, hey, I think you're creating
It's
more
good.
conflict. It's more
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
practical.
Yeah,
yeah, no, I
I
think
think
it should be.
it's,
Stick with what we have.
I think it's good the way we have, yeah. And there's that,
Yeah.
the DRB process will play it out if
All right.
there is
Okay.
intention.
So the other comments on this, by the attorney, he wanted us to, he suggested we specify Division of Fire Safety approved capacity. I don't think we actually need to do that, because again, the state's regulating that, managing that. You know. He wanted to tweak the definition a little bit, which I think is fine. You know, instead of just saying a rental basis and then short term, he wanted us to define short term no more than 72 hours. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
He wanted us to say also in the definition that all the things that are criteria for us, for our review, as spelled out below, includes vehicular traffic to and from and within the site, circulation, that
Seems good.
yeah. And then in the next section, general standards.
Same comment.
Yeah, extent reasonably practical.
Okay.
Seems fine with that.
Everyone agree?
That was the only, his only comment on the back page was the piece about setbacks for primary or for accessory structures. And so we're gonna stay with accessory structures.
All right.
Okay. Cool. Okay, onward to trails. Okay, so in the E1, E2, he wanted to say that the travel, when we have to be a little bit more precise about the use of the term trail, that we say the trail's traveled way will not exceed, because his comment was that trail rights of way are usually like 20 feet or something like that.
Okay.
And so, you know, he said, he wants us to be clear that we're referring to what you see on the ground is no more than 6 feet wide.
Okay.
That seems fine. And then number 4, trail bridges, they wanted to add ramps, culverts, and access points shall be limited to areas where the stream or river channel is narrow, blah, blah, blah. So he wanted to just be a little more clear and specific about different things that could be part of the trail's approach to a crossing of the stream. Good with that?
Mhm.
Yeah. And then down in 2B, he wanted us to substitute allow for permitted.
Okay.
Trail is, he inserted this word not intended for commercial use, but I think he actually missed the point on that. Because that was our point. It trails for commercial use. So I think I suggested that we maybe just clarify that it is for, that trails for commercial use in the first part of that in D, just to make it really clear what we're talking about here. And maybe I think I actually said something like trails for which a daily fee is charged, is what we're talking about.
That sounds.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Second-
Yeah, I mean, clearly it wasn't clear based on his comment, so it's
Yes.
good comment, and so we can
Flag
fix
for
it.
us, so we
Yeah,
can fix it,
yeah.
yes. And then, so top of the next page, that would be B234. He suggested, again, trails traveled way, to the maximum extent feasible. He thought that was too vague. So
So insert maximum there.
Yeah, just insert maximum.
Okay.
You good with that?
Seems like a legalese.
Yes. And then finally, under section 10.2 exemptions, further down the second page, again, it's clarifying traveled way no more than 6 feet wide. And then he had a clarification that the types of development that might trigger review would include not just structures, but also poles, bollards, or fencing to prohibit vehicular.
What's a
use of
bollard?
the tree.
I just Googled that, Roy.
Like posts, steel posts with concrete filled in them.
You know that they put around like government buildings
Oh,
to
yeah.
keep you from
Like a
driving your
fire
car.
I run into those all the time.
Yeah.
That's why they're there, right?
Yeah.
Keep them from going
Yeah.
any further.
The city put one up right next to my house to protect my gas meter, anybody from driving against my gas meter.
Oh, that's probably a good call.
It's right next to the driveway. It's like literally less than a foot from the active driveway. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're backing up, you had a couple of glasses of wine, it's dark.
Smoking your cigar.
All of a sudden.
It's funny, that's a safety bollard.
Yes. So we're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I lived in Arizona and was doing finance. The office we had was in like a retirement community, and they had put bollards all in front of this entire like strip mall because the older people would like get in their car or whatever and forget which
Right.
pedal they're pushing and like literally just go through the front. So that's like multiple times.
Oh.
So it wasn't just a one-off. So the
Uh-huh.
landlord just installed bollards like all the way down.
Oh my God.
So they're useful.
Yes, they are.
So it sounds like, that's it, right, Larry?
Mhm.
So with the next thing that is appropriate, say we make a motion to send these to the select board?
Yes.
So they can decide what,
Yeah, we're already on the select board agenda.
yes.
They're meeting 1 week from tonight. And the
Right.
select board hasn't yet set a date. We picked one out at the staff level, what could happen in terms of the required posting of notices ahead of time of the publication in a newspaper. But the select board hasn't, because they haven't seen the final version of these yet. They decided that they wanted to hear about them at a meeting. So Brian has already agreed to go a week from tonight to the select board meeting.
With Larry.
I'll be online, at least. And to answer their questions about it.
Hopefully.
Because we want them to understand why we're doing this, what each one would accomplish that we don't have now in the regs. And want to encourage them to take action on it, including starting with the scheduling a public hearing that meets the required notice.
Are we sending these over with those little cover
Yeah.
notes you had for each
I will
one?
do that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I'll update those and
I thought those were very helpful.
yes, thank you. And they'll get the edited version. So the things that we agreed to tonight
Yeah.
will be part of what they see. So it'll be a cleaned up draft with no little pointing arrows and boxes and highlights and all that kind of stuff. So, I think a motion to just basically forward these amended, reviewed drafts to the select board for their consideration would be in order.
Does anyone want to make that motion?
Yeah, I move that we adopt these land use reg changes with the discussion this evening to submit to the select board for consideration.
Second?
A second.
Thank you, Jen. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Send to the select board as amended.
Because then it'll be they'll consider it next time and then there'll have to be another week that it'll have to get posted before they can.
Yeah, there's a required 2 weeks advance
2 weeks.
notice of
Yeah.
publication before they can have the hearing. So I think they're talking about November 13th would be when they would have their public hearing. And then following the public hearing, they can make further changes, or they can just choose to let it sit, and go with what we recommended. And they are able to adopt them without any further process from there. The alternative is that they can choose to put one or more of these up for a full townwide vote, which would probably mean deferring until town meeting day. But I think most of this is really not controversy. they're definitely gonna hear from about the sawmills. People will show up for the hearing on that as they did for us.
Yeah.
But, if they think we did a good job, and they think that, townspeople would support having these additional rules in place, clarified standards, then they're able legally to just adopt them themselves without a vote. And actually, when I was interviewing for this job, one of my questions to the select board members who were present was, so if the planning commission does all this work and comes up with these regulations that are very carefully vetted by a town attorney, and with our own public hearing and public process, are you guys cool with actually adopting these? Because my last job in Charlotte, the select board was very skittish about that. And there were people in town who said, well, yeah, the select board has the authority to adopt things, but we want everything to go up for a town-wide vote. And it's like, it's not that we don't.
Did they get voted down when they did this?
Yes.
Really?
It got voted down, yeah.
Huh.
Technical amendments were able to pass, but it's just so much more difficult to explain technical changes to the rules at the level that we work at to the entire community, to the point where people can feel confident in casting a vote for or against. And it's really easy for people who feel like some rule changes could have enabled some type of development that they don't like to happen. It's very easy for them to pick at that and pull it out and cast all kinds of aspersions in a public campaign saying why this is a bad idea for them. And you don't really have time or bandwidth to respond to that when it happens. This is what happened in Charlotte. We proposed some very minor zoning adjustments for the East Charlotte Village, which is really just a hamlet. And people were so scared of the idea of anything changing at all in that little neighborhood that they, said, if you don't understand it, vote no. There was signs going up all over town, and there were other people who were accusing a landowner in the area that we were spot zoning for this one landowner's benefit, which was very far from the truth. And so it's just, I think it's important for us to be prepared to take the time to explain this to the select board and answer all their questions, and then leave it up to them to decide what to do with it. And hopefully they recognize that part of their role now, since the law changed, is that they can directly adopt these kinds of changes to town land use regulations if they feel like they've been thoroughly vetted and they're going to be improving upon what we have now. Because that's why we did it. Right.
Well, thank you, Larry.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
So that takes us to the pro-housing policies.
Yep. Give me a second here.
Yeah, take your time. It's crazy that almost 70% of the lots in Underhill Center are not conforming.
So the only thing I haven't read through the whole thing, but my only early upfront critique of the half acres, what my concern was a few meetings ago, was just about some kind of language that states that that's fine, provided there's a municipal wastewater system, because you're going to be, if you get somebody to split a larger lot to half acre lots and then they can't fit a septic on there, they're going to basically screw themselves. So
I think that kind of thing
That's implied though.
Yeah.
If you're going to develop something, you need to have a up-to-date wastewater permit to develop it. If you have an acre and you say, I'm going to split this into 2 half-acre lots, you have to have an engineer come in and do a site plan for you with the septic plan. So,
but shouldn't that be like something that is requested before the split is allowed?
Oh, yeah.
well, you wouldn't be able to get the permit to split it
Oh,
unless you had that.
so you'll have that
Yeah.
in hand first. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, subdivision review requires that. in all
Upfront,
instances.
I wasn't sure how, like the procedural step
Yeah.
of when it comes into play.
Yeah, so any questions about the reducing the minimum lot size
No, I mean, it seems like we're,
in the villages only?
My only, if this is not even a critique, it'll just be interesting to see what happens. I mean, we're basically just making more lots not being non-conforming.
Well, yeah, but in practical terms, what that means is that if you live in one of those lots,
Yeah,
you can actually do something. in
right,
your
because
house.
now you're not non-conforming.
Exactly. Yeah, so instead of having to go through this non-conforming process,
Yeah.
you can just present a proposal for development, and if it otherwise meets the setbacks, if you have septic, and you know, for example, you wanted to add an ADU, you know, you can go forward with that without jumping through a lot of hoops, just a simple building permit.
It seems like a practical change to make.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and, you know, the point that they made in the housing study was, you know, you have to really understand the landscape that's there already, you know, and you have to think about what it's like for people who actually live in that district in terms of, you know, enabling them to do things that people want to do with their houses, you know, to make modest incremental improvements. And so, you know, having a change like this would bring more of those lots into conformity, which makes less hoops that they would have to jump through to actually improve their properties, and that seems like a good thing.
So you mean now that you could, if you have a house on a lot that's only half an acre, it would become
Conforming more or
a
less.
conforming
Right.
lot. Okay, I got it.
Okay, on to the next one. So reduce the minimum lot frontage in Underhill Flats and Underhill Center zoning district. So you have to have now in the Flats district a minimum frontage of 150 feet and 100 feet in Underhill Center. And again, she pointed out in the housing study how many of the lots in both villages were non-conforming. A lot of them are, because typically there are smaller lots in the villages and they don't have as much frontage. And you know, if you take a step back from the numbers here, what's the purpose of frontage? Well, in land use planning, a minimum frontage requirement serves two purposes. One is that it ensures that you have access on a town or private road in the first place to your lot, which is, you know, a threshold issue for being able to build if you don't already have structure. And then the second purpose is to create some separation so that your neighbors are not right on top of you. And of course, setbacks do the same thing. Setbacks are another way to create the sort of a building envelope on the lot. But you know, in rural communities, and we had this discussion in Charlotte, a lot of discussions about this. You know, it's not unusual for in a rural district to have like a minimum 300-foot frontage, and in many cases that's not really even necessary because so many accesses in a rural part of town are across someone else's land with a right of way. You know, because you have to follow how the land is laid out, right? And if you've got a wetland in the front of your property on the actual road frontage, then the only way to get to it without encroaching in the wetland is to go around it with a right of way through your neighbor's property. And those are usually worked out as part of a subdivision or pre-development kind of a process. And they're in place and they work well, you know, once they're legally documented in the deed. So I think frontages are overrated, frankly, as a tool to control development because we have the setback requirements. If it's a lot that's been subdivided, we have typically a building envelope that's been specified for where you can build on the lot. And those, I think, kind of trump the idea of, you know, having a minimum frontage on a town road. So the point in the housing study was that, again, we want to make non-conforming lots conforming. We want to create more flexibility for people to build in a village setting where the lots are smaller, and 80 feet is you know, sort of much more typical lot size for the part of the lot that fronts on the road.
Any objections?
So that's the number was just kind of like based on.
That was their recommendation.
Our housing study.
in the
Oh,
housing study.
study.
Yeah.
I was just curious if somebody actually like took a disto and just shot like what the.
The consultant did a bunch of work.
In the
how
housing
they-
study, she presents a table.
they did
that
measure
shows, yeah, what percentage of the lots were conforming, and, you know, said that if we did this, it would reduce the nonconformities for frontage to 10% of the lots instead of.
This next one makes my head hurt, Larry.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know why.
It's a little more complicated because it's dealing with two different related issues, right?
Yeah.
So she's saying rather than just land on minimum lot size, and it makes more sense to limit residential density. And it's kind of a two-edged sword because in Charlotte, every zoning district had to define minimum residential or maximum residential density. And so, you know, and there's a little extreme in the sense of the two village districts in Charlotte, which are both historic village districts, not unlike Underhill's. The maximum residential density was 1 unit for 5 acres. Which makes no sense at all.
Yeah, really.
In a village setting, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you wield that sword as a blunt instrument, you're not paying attention to what the actual impact or effect would be, it can be a problem. So what she was saying here is you tie two things together. You have a minimum lot area, minimum lot size, and a maximum residential density. And that allows you to control how many units can go in a particular lot.
I have a dumb question though. So isn't like on a lot there, let's say you had, using the example in here, maybe this will make me understand. You can already put in a 2-flat because the state says you have to allow that, right?
You have to allow that.
And then you could also put in an ADU. So
No,
then,
you can,
You can't add an ADU if you have a duplex.
oh, if you have the duplex, you can't add the
So the
ADU.
ADU allowance is just for a single.
So
single
with this,
duplex.
then, I'm trying to figure out where this changes something. Is that what it changes? Then it would allow you to put in the ADU with the duplex because you would meet the maximum density rule? I like just need like a practical.
Yeah.
For me,
well,
like, how would this really practically affect?
The illustration that she gave in the housing study, I think is significant because it does show a hypothetical half-acre lot in one of the
Right.
villages with an existing large house.
And you
which is
split
now
the house up.
underutilized, cut the house in half, make a duplex.
Yeah,
And then there's still potential to add an ADU, which you could do before you duplex the house. And then the ADU is legal to add, and then you duplex the house.
but wouldn't the ADU be legal to add now if you got
Yes.
permission to do it? So does this just make it so the ADU is automatically legal to add, or you would still need approval?
I mean, you still need,
In our rules, you would still need approval.
you still need a zoning permit.
Right.
So this is really just changing up the maximum residential density, which we talked about at our last meeting. So that was David's concern at our last meeting. David Edson was saying that if we strip out the part of the rules that say you can only have one principal
Yeah.
use or lot or a dwelling on a lot, then you open us up to situations where we had any number of units that could be pumped into a relatively small lot or even a larger lot. And my response was, well, there's other restrictions, and particularly what we're really just talking about here is in the villages. And we're trying to make it easier for people who have houses that are way bigger than they need to create more housing within the framework of the buildings that are already there. And so, you know, this further defines a regulatory framework for what we're going to allow. And I think David's point was, you know, we were talking about an absolute number of limits for multifamily dwellings in the villages last time. And this is like a different way of getting at that same concept. It's a way of saying, it's a village district. There's not an unlimited number of units you can pump onto a single property. So that if you adopt this maximum residential density, then that allows you to constrain what can be done to what most people who live in the villages would think is a reasonable template for infill development.
So does it mainly pertain to infill then, like, or so you can't go in and build like a sixplex from scratch? Or can you bulldoze an old giant house, 200-year-old thing, and put a sixplex on it based on the density? Because this thing's saying up to 6 dwellings.
But that would still be regulated in other areas of the regs.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
That's where I'm confused
Yeah.
too.
Yes.
Oops, sorry. So you can say like, oh, it's a maximum of this based on the density, but really our regulations bring it back down to, no, it's just 2 or whatever.
That's where I'm struggling. What does
So why
this
even
actually
do
add?
Nothing.
That's where I feel like I'm dumb. Like I'm trying to figure out what
It's like
does
you're
this
making a-
effectively
Yeah, you're
do?
making like an infinity circle for no reason.
Like we're saying, yes, this is a philosophy we have, but is it actually what is it practically changing?
Like maybe it works somewhere else, but not here. So why even adopt it?
Well, or else I'm not understanding it, which is very possible. But like, what am I missing? What does it give you now that you don't currently have in the regulation?
I think it provides guidance and hard stop or hard limits on infill development in a way that will be reassuring to people who live in the villages and would like to see the villages retain their historic character. So
I'm worried that it's gonna do what Jeff just said.
Yeah.
When you see the
I-
number
I think it-
6,
yeah.
I think people are gonna be like,
I think it's,
whoa,
from my
6
perspective,
flat on a half
from a
acre.
layman that lives in this town, I feel like it does the opposite of that.
I'm worried it's
because
gonna
this is just
freak
a
people out.
Yeah, this is just the build more houses agenda that they're advertising to us with, with not a whole lot of like, I don't know, hard.
But I'm worried about
reality.
I'm worried about the headline. I think when you see it, it says 6 dwellings per acre in the village center, and you're gonna be like, whoa, some developer is gonna come in and put 6 units on this
Right.
half
Yeah.
acre, and I'm worried we're stirring the pot.
They're gonna be 800
Do
square
you
foot
worry about that?
bungalow.
No. I mean, I think where this is coming from is that, Brandy Saxon looked at our current regulations and said they're hostile to multifamily.
Right.
And with Act 181, Act 47, Home Act and Act 181, I think the legislature was clearly setting a statewide policy that they don't want to see towns unduly restricting multifamily development. They were okay with, setting limits on it, like you can, say only up to 4 units would be allowed on a certain type of a property. But they didn't want towns saying, oh, you have to go through conditional use, you have to go through site plan review, you have to give neighbors a chance to say they don't like it. So at our last session, we talked about what are the issues that could arise. And when you have conditional use review required for any type of multifamily development, which is where we're at now, you provide openings for neighbors to come in and say, oh, we only have single family homes on this block, we don't want to see.
Except for 2 floods, right? You can put in a 2 flood anywhere you.
Right, that's allowed by right now.
Yeah.
But anything bigger than 2 is a more process and, a more difficult regulatory path to approval.
What's that? What's the red, the red brick building in the flats? Like how many units are in there?
Red brick building.
Like where there was
The
a,
apartment building,
Yeah.
the brick house.
because I know they just redid the basement and added more units down there. I've never counted the meters, but there's quite a few on there.
Wait, so is that what it opens up then? If you're a developer, I just want to play out the worst case scenario. If someone, so if you're a developer, you could put, and you could get your hands on 1 acre.
Mhm.
Then you could put in, let's just pick on, I'll just pick the flats then. You could, so you could get your hands on 1 acre, you could put in 6 units and it wouldn't be conditional. You'd still have to come, would you still have to go to the DRB then? Or no, because it's not conditional.
You wouldn't have to go through the.
Because it's
DRB
not
necessarily.
conditional. So that's what it's doing.
Yes. And none of this is going to happen without community septic.
Well, the
Oh, yeah.
septic is the practical limit on all of this.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just want to make, so what it's really doing, I don't know, that's a bad way to phrase it. What it's really doing is it's taking these developments out of conditional use where any of them to theoretically happen.
Right, but also puts constraints in a way that I think would be.
But it caps it.
It caps it, yeah, puts a cap.
So it takes out like a donut hole type thing out of conditional use, like between the 2 and the 6.
Yes.
Basically, I understand.
Yeah, it's good practice, there might be some kinks that have to be worked out, or some details that need to be fleshed out here, so.
I don't know, from a guy that's done development for my whole career, like density is a horrible word because developers twist that thing so many ways to get their way, and I don't like it, but that's just my perspective. It just seems like, I know there's an agenda through the state, but I don't think it works everywhere they want to push it. Like, yeah, it works great in Essex, Williston,
Yeah.
Burlington, whatever. Like you drive through there, it doesn't even look like rural Vermont, and that's
Sure.
fine. You get places like that, it is, but like to try to like put that same postage stamp like here or St. Johnsbury or Cambridge, wherever.
Yep.
It just seems kind of, I don't know, far-fetched to me.
Yeah, I mean, smaller town centers in various places, I'll just give you 2 examples, have figured out a way to do this in a way that doesn't look like it really disrupts the fabric of the village setting. So Lindenville and South Europe. I don't know if any of you have been to either one of those places lately.
Driven through South Europe.
I've driven through.
Yeah, but there's been some recent public housing addition in the village of South Hero. And I think it's 2 stories, and it's tucked behind a relatively new commercial development on the main strip there. And it's, there's a new post office there, there's a cider, social services place, there's a new town library there. But because it's tucked behind and it's incorporated in part of the fabric of this new village center that they've created, it works. And people, didn't object to it because, South Hero is in some ways like Underhill or Cambridge in that, they're like they've got the summer resort thing going on. A lot of people come only during the summer, so it's seasonal, and people can't afford to live there who service the residents who are coming in for the summer.
So I'm wondering, sorry, we can take a quick consensus. We need to get to Larry's grant application. So my proposal would be, unless everyone hates this, because people seem to want to talk about this, or at least maybe it's just Jeff and I, but maybe we bring this back at next meeting, or we can bring it back in 5 minutes. But let's at least jump to the grant application for now, so we get that done by 7:30. And if it takes 2 minutes, then we can come right back to this. But I just don't want to miss the grant application, because we're up against the deadline, basically, right, Larry?
Yes.
Okay. Did anyone have any, well, maybe the grant application is really short. Did anyone have any questions or comments? Obviously, it's an update on what Larry did last time.
I think it was great.
Jen or Tavid?
Yeah, it's good that we get another crack at it. Is it, they have like a couple cycles for it per year kind of thing?
Well, usually it's just 1 a year.
Yeah,
But the state was late to the table for the last round because they have this online grants platform that was a mess. And so it took them a while to fix it, where they were
Okay.
feeling good about making it go live again. So that's why there was a delay. Normally, this is the time of year when they usually put out the RFP and accept applications, but they postponed it all the way till last spring. April 1st was the deadline for the previous round. But now they're back on track. And so this is our one shot for FY 27. Would be when this grant would be coming in. And it's a 1.5 year project. So we can take our time and do it right. And it really piggybacks in a lot of ways on the survey that you guys drafted, because it's a bigger visioning than just the wastewater issue, but it asks the same kinds of questions, but with a much more inclusive process. And that's the whole point of it, is to get people in town thinking about more dense development and infill development possibilities in the district as a way of alleviating the housing crisis in town. And what does the town support that idea in general? Because right up until now, it's only been this very vague statement of good intentions in the town plan, but we've never done anything about it to actually make that happen. So this is a way to establish whether there is strong public support to go forward with a lot of these kinds of changes we've been talking about tonight in our last meeting. And if there is, then that will bolster efforts going forward to continue to revise the rule book to allow more infill development, and also to further the cause of the town's involvement in this wastewater project for the Flats district.
Does this need to go to the select board?
It does.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what we're doing is voting on sending this to the select board. Is anyone opposed to doing that?
Well, you guys actually have to.
I'll make a motion. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we send this to the select board for their approval with our recommendation that we apply for this grant. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Tavid, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you for all your work on that, Larry.
Yeah.
Should we send it in with a case of beer and some cheese and to increase our chances?
Actually, I have a story related to that, which I'll share afterwards. Okay,
Some Underhill maple syrup, I don't know.
Yeah. Whatever we can.
So Brian, you moved it and.
And Tavid second.
Yes, Approve 5, thank you, okay.
Because it'll go in this week, or the select board will approve
Take it
it
up
at
next
the
week.
next meeting too.
We're like filling up their whole agenda.
Yeah, that'll be big for us.
Yeah. All right, that takes us back to, sorry for that brief detour, but that takes us back to where we were.
Yes.
Well, it dovetails with this too, huh?
Yes. Since Jeff and I have been asking all the questions, maybe just start, sorry, Jen, picking on you and we go around. How do you feel about it?
I'm gonna give it a thumbs up.
Okay. Roy, just going around
I'm
the
not
table.
sure how I feel about
Do
it.
you want to mull it over and circle back on it, or what do you want to do?
I don't know, it seems like we're writing laws for something that can't happen until we have.
Like, that's how I feel about it. It's like, if we're already kind of, it can't really happen, then, like, why twist
why
our
would-
brains over nothing?
Yeah, why do we need to address something that can't happen unless something else major happens, which is, you know what I mean?
The wastewater.
Yeah, it's like, why are we writing laws for, or rewriting laws for something that can't happen unless we get this wastewater
Yeah.
deal through, and then, you know, and then we should readdress it then, because it might open up a whole nother can of worms that we need to address. This is just kind of like some fluff that we're kind of putting in the bylaws, and somebody might read it and say, what is this? You know,
Larry, can you remind me of the timeline on the wastewater?
It's probably no sooner than 2027,
Okay.
because they have to first complete the engineering for the new system, and that will drive what the cost is, and then the cost will drive the decision-making process, which will include applying for
Mhm.
grants in this CHIPS program as a way to reduce the costs, the local costs of the town. Yeah, so, but the engineering work won't be done until probably the early next year. And then it becomes, you know, there are other steps after that before there's going to be approvals and any plan to build. And you have to obviously have the money to build it first. So the finances are no small thing, you know, they're going to drive a lot. And as Westford found out much of its dismay, you know, it's not a done deal until the townspeople, you
put a
know.
whole lot of effort into it, and
Yeah.
then nothing happened, and it's like, it seemed a little short-sighted to me. I mean, if that happens here, I'll feel the same way, because I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I also feel like anything that's larger than just what we have now should still be a conditional use permit, like.
Go to the DRB.
Yeah, because I think each situation is different depending on who the neighbors are, and it's important to bring in the neighbors into a permitting situation where somebody comes along and wants to do something bigger than has always been there, that the neighbors should have their input before you get the permit. And if you just have a process where you walk in and you get a permit to build something, you know, high density, that the only way the neighbor can fight it is to go to environmental court after you get the permit. And that doesn't seem fair to me, I guess.
Well, just to be clear, Roy, you're right in all except for one thing, which is that if the permit is properly posted, neighbors have up to 15 days to appeal the zoning permit.
Okay.
And if they do, it goes to the DRB to consider that appeal first. Now, if the DRB backstops the zoning administrator's granting of the permit, then they have to go to environment.
Right. And, okay, I get you.
Yeah. So it's a simpler process, but it does cost money to file an appeal as a zoning administrator.
Yeah. And, I mean, I understand the DRB wanting to streamline things and make it easier to get some of these permits, but this seems like something that doesn't necessarily need to be streamlined, especially now, because if we get this wastewater plant or.
Yeah, like, what's the harm in just pushing this down the line 9 months, right? Like, I mean, is
it could be 5
CCRPC
years.
gonna like come and yell at us, or like, what's the deal?
You're a contact person. Liaison.
Yeah, right.
How do you feel, Praveen?
Yeah, I think I'm similarly feeling a little confused about the maximum density piece, but I do think I feel good about the lot sizes and the frontage road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like we have unanimity.
Yeah.
on that lot size and
Yeah.
frontage, so.
Because it could be even, I mean, I don't know, but there might be some instances where there's a duplex that could happen on a lot in the villages without the wastewater, and maybe that those things.
Yeah.
But
If
it,
you're, I
But
guess,
it's already permissible as it stands.
Yeah.
It's just this other density issue
yeah,
that's getting pushed.
yeah, a question about the
Like I need more.
duplex issue. I don't know if you can answer this, but if you have a house in the flats and it's a big house and it has 4 bedrooms, okay? And you have a septic system that was there for 20 years or 30 years, so no record of what's there.
Yeah.
Okay. And you want to turn that house into it's a
2
4-bedroom
bedrooms.
house, 2-bedroom
Right.
units. Can you just do that without getting a septic permit for that?
You'd still have to get a septic permit through the state because you're changing the calculus in terms of how DEC allocates the wastewater capacity by splitting it into 2 different units.
Oh.
So it's like, the first bedroom is X amount, the second bedroom is Y amount. And you have to add X and Y for both units and the additional flow from probably the additional kitchen, perhaps as well, for the state to be able to say, yeah, this works, or no, you have to expand your septic. So it's a different permit than for a single family.
Gotcha.
But it's still a state permit.
Yeah, so you have to prove that you have an adequate septic
Yes.
system, which is probably 90% of the septic systems in the flats are not.
What's that big field? Isn't there a big septic field over there behind like Jacob's Market? What is that big field? Because there's
Those
PCC,
are tests,
that's all they
they're pipes where they
Yeah, I
test
see
the
those.
groundwater level. I
Oh,
believe.
just for
I think
groundwater.
that's what those are.
I wasn't sure if those are like, clean outs for a leach field. or
No,
what.
I don't think so.
Maybe that was it.
So David, where are you on this density thing? And are you saying sort of what Roy's saying, or are you more with where Jen was at, or?
Yeah, I think I'd be good with, if we're looking at moving this ahead to the select board, with moving ahead the lot size changes in the frontage, but I feel like I'm not. Yeah, that's where I'm at now. Is it, like, we'd like to send this maybe with the other.
Yeah, are you?
No.
trying to
This
send
is the new stuff.
This is,
So
yeah, this
we're
is-
only
yeah.
talking about sending the old stuff that we finished
Got it.
off in the
Right.
summer.
We're getting in.
This is something we're going to address.
Yes.
We got to revisit.
Yeah.
So why don't we, subject to you, just based on the pretty obvious thinking, I think, what if we kind of like internally package up 1, 2, and 4? Because not to jump ahead, but 4 looks like we're just making a change we have to comply with state law for group homes for people with disabilities. So obviously, unless anyone's opposed to, I mean, that's conforming to state law. I think 1, 2, and 4, it sounds like they're packaged up and everyone's on board.
Yep.
And maybe 3,
Table it.
table it and
Yep.
comes back out at some other point.
Sounds good
That
to me.
sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think we can approve the minutes. You know the rules better than me. I wasn't there.
Uh-huh.
Do you need a quorum of people who
Oh,
were
yeah.
physically present?
Yes.
So those have to
Yeah.
get booted to next meeting.
Yeah, so that would have been
I was absent.
Yeah,
Ken,
sorry,
Art,
I
Roy,
missed it,
T.
too.
Oh, yeah,
Chad.
David was absent as well. So we're not even
We're all-
close. Yeah, we're not even.
None of us are there.
Oh my God.
Jen
we
was
only
the
have
only
2
one.
people. Jen and Roy are the only
Oh, you're right. I approve them.
Okay.
Duly noted.
Duly noted that Roy is in favor of the minutes for the last meeting.
I read them, but I don't know if they're I'll try to be here next time.
Anything else, Larry? It sounds like that's, and just real briefly, so next meeting, I'm trying to remember what we're doing. What's on tap for next meeting? I know we had it all planned out.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, November 6th, we're gonna spend more time on pro-housing policies if necessary, which maybe we don't do. And then the other thing I put on the schedule was natural resource inventory. So to come back to that, we've been set that aside a long
Yeah.
time ago.
We did.
So the question would be, what regulatory changes do we want to entertain and develop?
That's a big
That's a
topic.
big topic, yeah. So that, that could be like a one-topic meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might actually be even more. I could see there being disagreements
Of course.
for sure.
Because we were talking about maybe having a natural resources overlay district.
Yeah.
As one option.
Yeah.
And it would also involve like tightening up some of the wetland and surface water setbacks, and habitat connector.
I think David in particular is gonna have strong views on some of these topics.
So probably that would be a main focus.
Okay, so natural resources next week.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
I believe you know your responsibility, Chris, in the chair you're sitting in to be.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Roy, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.